So I've switched to Linux. I'm using Cache EOS. However, I want to use some of my Windows applications. The main one for me is Ableton. I've purchased an Ableton license and have historically used it on Windows. So obviously I want to move that over and have the ability to continue using that. So the solution that I found was not to use Wine on Yardbridge, because quite honestly, you're going to get issues with your VSTs, particularly around certain licenses. So this is the solution that I've came up with. And this is essentially using QEMU or QEMU, however you'd like to pronounce it. On top of that, we're using an application called Looking Glass. So Looking Glass allows me to have sort of zero or near zero latency with a virtual machine. So instead of using VGA or QXL to sort of render the virtual machine, you're essentially using a dedicated graphics card, which is then piped into Looking Glass, and it just works incredibly. So for example, I can switch between my Linux host and my Windows virtual machine with just a single keyboard shortcut. So as you can see, I've sort of put the Windows virtual machine full screen onto Workspace 2, allowing Workspace 1 to run my Linux applications. So this setup has worked brilliantly. It's allowed me to, again, run Ableton with zero latency. I can run all of my VSTs. Yes, you're having to use Windows. Yes, you're using virtualization. However, with the Looking Glass solution, it's just incredibly smooth. One of the key things that I had to do was obviously pass through some PCI devices. To get zero latency with the sound, I've had to use a dedicated PCI USB-free card. So this is just a cheap £20 USB PCI free card that I got from Amazon. And this is where I plug my audio card into. So I've just got a complete Audio 2 sound card. And when plugging that in, because you're passing through an entire dedicated PCI card, this solves the latency problem that a lot of people have been having when trying to pass through a USB audio card into the KVM. So yeah, this works brilliantly. This is the solution that's sort of I've landed on. It's better than Wine. It's, you don't have to dual boot. It's the best of both worlds. And yeah, you can use all your other Windows applications, which might not necessarily work natively. For example, I'm a big sort of user of the Adobe Creative Cloud. Ultimately, I'd love to sort of, wean my way off these Windows applications. But, if it's what you're used to, if it's, the workflows of these applications, you've bought the licenses and you're paying for licenses, you kind of want to continue using those. I will go, if requested, go into sort of a more in-depth tutorial on how to set this up. But as a bit of research, check out Looking Glass. It's looking-glass.io. Look into QEMU. Look into PCI isolation. There's lots of tutorials out there. There's a lot of reading to do. It did take me almost a week to get this set up in between sort of work. But, the results have been flawless. And yeah, quite frankly, this has worked great for me. Cool. If you want to give me a like, a subscribe, all of that good jazz, then yeah, feel free. But yeah, thanks again. Cheers.